The elevator lurched to a stop between the 42nd and 43rd floors, trapping Aria Washington inside the most expensive building in Miami, with a man whose very presence made the air feel electric. She clutched her insulated delivery bag tighter, acutely aware of how her worn sneakers and faded uniform contrasted with his perfectly tailored black suit. The Korean man stood impossibly still, his dark eyes fixed on the emergency panel where red lights blinked ominously. "The engineers said it would take hours to fix," he said, his voice carrying an authority that made her pulse quicken. When he turned to look at her, Aria felt something shift in her chest, a recognition she couldn't name. "But you're not an engineer, are you?" Aria's fingers traced the small toolkit she always carried, the one her father had given her before he died. "No, sir. I'm just someone who delivers food." She paused, studying the panel with eyes that had learned to see solutions where others saw problems. But sometimes the simplest problems need the simplest solutions. What she didn't know was that this elevator malfunction was no accident, and that the man watching her with growing fascination controlled half of Miami's underground empire. What he didn't know was that this delivery girl was about to solve more than just his engineering problem. She was about to solve the emptiness he'd carried in his chest for years. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Hey there. Please drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support makes all the difference for us to keep creating these emotional stories. Aria Washington balanced 3 delivery bags on her hip as she navigated through the marble lobby of the Meridian Tower, Miami's most exclusive residential building. The 45-story glass monument to wealth and power made her feel like an ant among giants, but she'd learned long ago that confidence was just another delivery she had to make. Fake it till you make it. "Penthouse delivery for Mr. Choi," she announced to the concierge, a stern-faced man whose suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. He looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Service elevator is around back." "The service elevator is broken," Aria replied evenly, having already tried that route. "Has been for 3 days, according to your maintenance staff." The concierge's expression soured further. "Then I'm afraid you'll have to— Is there a problem here?" The voice cut through the lobby like silk over steel. Aria turned to see a man emerging from the main elevator bank, and her breath caught involuntarily. He was Korean, probably in his early 30s, with the kind of sharp, angular features that belonged in magazines. His black hair was perfectly styled, and he wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been crafted specifically for his lean, powerful frame. But it was his eyes that made her pulse stutter, dark, intelligent, and currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "Mr. Choi," the concierge stammered, suddenly deferential. "This delivery person insists on using the main elevator." "I see." The man, Mr. Choi, stepped closer, and Aria caught a hint of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "And you are?" "Aria Washington, sir. I have your dinner order." She held up the bags, proud that her voice remained steady, despite the way he was looking at her. "Korean barbecue from Seoul Kitchen." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe amusement. "You ordered from Seoul Kitchen?" What?" Aria blinked, confused. "I didn't place any order tonight." His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made the concierge take a step back. Aria's heart sank as she pulled out her phone, double-checking the delivery app. The address was correct, the name matched, but as she looked closer at the order details, something felt off. The order had been placed only 20 minutes ago, which was unusually short notice for this upscale area, and the payment method was listed as cash, which almost never happened in buildings like this. "Someone used your name and address," she said slowly, her mind racing. "But why would—" The lights in the lobby suddenly flickered, and a low rumble echoed through the building. Emergency lighting kicked in as the main power died, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "What the hell?" the concierge muttered, reaching for his radio. Mr. Choi's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His relaxed posture shifted to high alert, his hand moving instinctively to his jacket. "How many people knew you were coming here tonight?" he asked Aria, his voice sharp. Just the restaurant and whoever placed the order." Aria's delivery instincts kicked in. She'd been in enough sketchy situations to recognize when something was very wrong. But the order was weird. Cash payment, short notice, and they specifically requested the main elevator. Mr. Choi's eyes narrowed. Someone wanted you here, in this building, tonight. Before Arya could ask what he meant, the sound of footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Heavy, purposeful footsteps. Multiple sets. "Sir," the concierge whispered urgently into his radio, "we need security in the lobby immediately." But Mr. Choi was already moving, his hand closing around Arya's wrist with surprising gentleness. "We need to go, now." "Wait, what's happening?" Arya demanded, even as she let him guide her toward the main elevator bank. "Why would someone—" "Because," he said, jabbing the elevator call button repeatedly, "someone knows exactly who I am, and they're using you to get to me." The elevator doors opened just as the stairwell door burst open. 3 men in dark clothing emerged, their faces covered, and Arya's blood turned to ice when she saw the weapons in their hands. "Get in," Mr. Choi commanded, pulling her into the elevator. As the doors began to close, Arya caught a glimpse of the lead intruder raising his weapon. Mr. Choi shoved her behind him, his body becoming a shield between her and whatever was about to happen. The elevator doors sealed shut, just as the sound of gunfire erupted in the lobby below. "Oh my God," Arya whispered, her back pressed against the elevator wall. "Oh my God, what just happened?" Mr. Choi was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in Korean. His voice was calm, controlled, but Arya could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand remained near his jacket. "Who are you?" she asked when he ended the call. "And why did those men want to hurt you?" He turned to face her fully, and for a moment his carefully controlled mask slipped. She saw something raw in his expression, regret, maybe even guilt. "My name is Hae-jin Choi," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry you got caught up in this." "That doesn't answer my question." The elevator suddenly shuddered and stopped moving. The floor indicator showed they were stuck between the 42nd and 43rd floors. Hae-jin cursed under his breath in Korean, then tried the emergency call button. Nothing happened. "They cut the power to trap us," he said grimly. "This was planned." Arya stared at him, pieces of a terrifying puzzle starting to come together. "You're not just some rich businessman, are you?" His silence was answer enough. "The fake delivery order, the power outage, the men with guns." Arya's voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone wanted me here as leverage against you." "I won't let anything happen to you," Hae-jin said. And the fierce protectiveness in his voice made something flutter in her chest despite their dire circumstances. "I promise you that." "Why should I trust you?" Arya asked, even though something deep inside her already did. "I don't even know what you do, who those men were, or why—" The elevator lurched violently and she stumbled forward. Hae-jin caught her instantly, his arms wrapping around her to steady her against his chest. For a moment, they were frozen like that, her hands pressed against the solid warmth of his chest, his arms encircling her protectively. "Because," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear, "you're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen just a man. Not a reputation, not a name, not what I represent. Just me." Arya pulled back to meet his eyes, and what she saw there made her heart race for entirely different reasons than fear. "Then tell me who you really are, Hae-jin Choi." "I run a business empire," Hae-jin said carefully, his arms still around her in the confined space of the stalled elevator. "Import and export primarily, but some of my competitors prefer more direct negotiation tactics." Arya studied his face, noting how he chose his words with precision. "Import and export of what exactly?" Before he could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We have the building surrounded. Send down the girl, and we'll let you live." Hae-jin read the message over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. "They're using you to force my hand." "But why me?" Arya asked, frustration bleeding into her voice. "I'm nobody. I deliver food for a living. I drive a 10-year-old Honda and live in a studio apartment in Little Haiti. What could they possibly gain from—" "You're not nobody," Hae-jin interrupted, his voice fierce. "And the fact that they chose you specifically means they've been watching me. They know—" He trailed off, but Arya caught the implication. "They know what?" "That I've been ordering from Seoul Kitchen every Tuesday for the past 2 months," he admitted quietly, "always requesting the same delivery driver." Arya's eyes widened. "You've been requesting me specifically." A flush of color appeared on his sharp cheekbones. "You always smile when you hand over the food, even when I can tell you've had a long day." Even when the concierge treats you like dirt, you still smile. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? Something warm unfurled in Arya's chest, but she pushed it down. So they used your interest in me to set a trap. It appears so. Hai-Jin pulled out his phone again, scrolling through messages with growing tension. My security team is en route, but they're dealing with roadblocks and traffic diversions. This was coordinated. Arya looked around the elevator, her mind shifting into problem-solving mode, a skill she'd inherited from her father, who'd been an electrician before his death 3 years ago. How long have the engineers been trying to fix this elevator? The building management called them 4 hours ago. They've been working on it since then with no success. 4 hours? Arya frowned, studying the emergency panel. For a simple power outage, that doesn't make sense. She approached the panel, noting the blinking red lights and the digital display that showed error codes she didn't recognize. But underneath the modern interface, she could see older mechanical components, the kind her father had taught her about during their weekend projects. "What are you doing?" Hai-Jin asked as she knelt down and opened the small toolkit she always carried. "Those engineers have been overthinking this," Arya said, using a small flashlight to examine the wiring behind the panel. "They're probably trying to reset the computerized systems, but look." She pointed to a loose connection near the manual override switch. "Someone deliberately disconnected this. It's not a power failure. It's sabotage." Hai-Jin crouched beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Can you fix it?" "Maybe. But if I do, we'll be moving again. And those men will know exactly which floor we stop on." "My penthouse has a secure room," Hai-Jin said. "Reinforced steel, independent communication systems, if we can get there." Arya's hands worked steadily as she spoke, reconnecting wires and bypassing the damaged circuits. What kind of businessman needs a panic room? The kind who has enemies. And what kind of enemies carry military-grade weapons and coordinate building takeovers? Hai-Jin was quiet for a long moment. "The kind you make when you refuse to let them control your territory." Territory. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Arya's pulse quicken. She'd grown up in Miami, she knew the stories, the rumors about certain businesses that operated in the shadows. "You're not just import-export, are you?" she said softly. "No," he admitted. "I'm not." The elevator suddenly hummed to life, the lights flickering back on as the car began to rise smoothly toward the penthouse. "You did it," Hai-Jin said, wonder in his voice. 4 hours of engineering work, and you fixed it in 10 minutes. "Sometimes the simplest problems need the simplest solutions," Arya replied, echoing her father's favorite saying. But as she looked at Hai-Jin's face, illuminated by the returning lights, she realized that whatever was happening between them was anything but simple. The elevator chimed softly as they reached the penthouse level. As the doors opened, Hai-Jin stepped protectively in front of her, scanning the hallway before allowing her to exit. His penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Miami's skyline, and the decor was a perfect blend of modern luxury and Korean traditional elements. But Arya barely had time to take it in before Hai-Jin was guiding her toward a bookshelf that swung open to reveal the secure room he'd mentioned. "Stay here," he said, his hand lingering on her arm. "I need to contact my people, and—" "No." Arya's voice was firm. "I'm not hiding while you handle this alone. Those men used me to get to you, which means I'm already involved whether I like it or not." "Arya, you don't understand the kind of danger." "Then explain it to me," she challenged. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I've been taking care of myself since I was 18. I work 3 jobs to support my younger brother's college tuition. I've delivered food to drug dealers and gang members and corrupt politicians, and I've never once backed down from a challenge." Hai-Jin stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would run. Someone who would blame me for putting them in danger and demand to be taken somewhere safe." Arya stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I'm not running anywhere. Not until I understand what's happening and why someone thought they could use me as a pawn in whatever game this is." "It's not a game," Hai-Jin said quietly. "It's war, and the stakes are higher than you can imagine." Before Arya could respond, the sound of shattering glass echoed from the main living area. They weren't alone in the penthouse anymore. Hai-Jin moved with fluid precision, drawing a sleek black pistol from his shoulder holster as he positioned himself between Arya and the sounds of intrusion. His transformation was complete. Gone was the polite businessman, replaced by someone who clearly knew how to handle violence. "How many?" Arya whispered, surprised by her own calm. "At least 3, based on the entry points," he replied, his voice barely audible. "They came up the emergency stairs and through the balcony access. There's a balcony access 43 floors up. When you have the resources, anything is possible." Heijin's eyes never left the doorway as he spoke into a wireless earpiece she hadn't noticed before. "Alpha Team, I need immediate extraction. Penthouse is compromised." The response crackled back in Korean, and Arya watched his expression darken. "What did they say?" she asked. "My security team is pinned down in the parking garage. We're on our own for at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Arya's mind raced, thinking about the building's layout, the service corridors she'd navigated during her deliveries, the maintenance areas most people never saw. "I know another way out," she said suddenly. Heijin glanced at her sharply. "What?" "The building's HVAC system. There's a maintenance corridor that runs behind the penthouse level. I've seen the building schematics when I was waiting for service elevator repairs. It connects to the emergency stairwell on the opposite side of the building." "That's impossible. I've lived here for 2 years. I know every—" "You know every official access point," Arya interrupted. "But delivery drivers see things differently. We notice the spaces between spaces, the routes that aren't on the luxury tour." Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, growing closer. Heijin's grip tightened on his weapon. "Show me," he said. Arya led him through the penthouse to what appeared to be a decorative wall panel near the kitchen. But she'd noticed during previous deliveries that the panel didn't quite align with the others, a telltale sign of a hidden access point. "Here," she said, running her fingers along the edge until she found the concealed latch. The panel swung open, revealing a narrow maintenance corridor that smelled of metal and machinery. "How did you—" Heijin began, but the sound of his front door being breached cut him off. "Questions later, survival now," Arya said, slipping into the corridor. The space was cramped, barely wide enough for one person, and they had to move in single file. Arya led the way, using her phone's flashlight to navigate the maze of pipes and electrical conduits. Behind her, she could hear Heijin moving with surprising quiet for such a large man. "There," she whispered, pointing to a junction where the corridor branched off toward the emergency stairwell. "That should take us—" The sound of metal clanging echoed through the corridor behind them. Their pursuers had found the access panel. "Move," Heijin urged, his hand pressing gently against her back. They reached the stairwell access just as shouts erupted from the corridor behind them. Arya pushed through the door, and they emerged into the emergency stairwell on the building's east side, exactly where she'd predicted. "Down or up?" she asked. "Down. My car is in the executive parking level." They began descending rapidly, their footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. Arya's delivery bag bounced against her hip with each step, a surreal reminder of how this night had started. "Arya," Heijin said as they reached the 30th floor. "What you did back there finding that corridor, that was brilliant." "I pay attention," she replied, slightly breathless from their pace. "It's a survival skill when you're trying to make deliveries in buildings designed to keep people like me invisible." "People like you?" "Working class. Black. Female. Take your pick." Heijin stopped abruptly, catching her arm. "Look at me." Arya turned, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "You are not invisible," he said fiercely. "Not to me. Not ever." Something electric passed between them in that moment, a connection that had nothing to do with their current danger and everything to do with the way he was looking at her, like she was precious, like she mattered. "Hey, Jin," she started, but the sound of footsteps above them broke the spell. They continued downward, but at the 20th floor, Heijin suddenly stopped again. "Wait," he said, pressing his ear to the stairwell door. "I hear voices. They have people positioned at the parking levels too." "Then we're trapped," Arya said, her heart sinking. "No." Heijin's expression was grim but determined. "We fight our way out." "We? I don't know how to—" "You don't have to fight. You just have to trust me." He turned to face her fully, his hands coming up to frame her face. "I need you to know something. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." "I know that." And when this is over, when you're safe, if you never want to see me again, I'll understand. I'll make sure you're protected, but I won't contact you, won't—" "Stop," Arya interrupted, her own hands coming up to cover his. "You're talking like we're not going to make it out of this." "I'm talking like a man who's just realized he has something to lose," He-Jin said quietly. "Something more important than territory or power or reputation." The footsteps above them were getting closer, and Arya could hear radio chatter echoing down the stairwell. But in that moment, with He-Jin's hands warm against her face and his eyes holding hers with desperate intensity, the danger felt secondary to the truth hanging between them. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying that in one night, you've become more important to me than anything I've spent years building, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could." Before Arya could respond, the stairwell door above them burst open, and the sound of heavy boots began descending toward them. "20th floor," a voice called out. "Check every level." He-Jin's expression hardened back into the dangerous man she'd glimpsed earlier. "Stay behind me," he commanded, drawing his weapon. "And whatever happens, don't look back." But as they prepared to face whatever was coming, Arya realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the men hunting them, not of the violence that seemed inevitable. She was afraid of only one thing: losing this man before she had a chance to understand what he meant to her. The footsteps were getting closer. It was time to find out if they were strong enough to fight for whatever was growing between them. The stairwell erupted into chaos as He-Jin engaged the first wave of attackers. Arya pressed herself against the concrete wall, watching in stunned silence as the man she'd thought was just a businessman moved with lethal precision. Every shot was calculated, every movement efficient and deadly. But there were too many of them. The parking garage. He-Jin called to her between bursts of gunfire. "We need to reach my car." They fought their way down 3 more floors, but Arya could see that He-Jin was slowing down. A dark stain was spreading across his left shoulder, and his breathing had become labored. "You're hurt," she said when they reached a brief lull on the 17th floor. "I'm fine," he lied, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "No, you're not." Arya pulled off her delivery jacket and pressed it against his shoulder. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that I can't keep this up much longer," he admitted grimly. "Arya, I need you to listen to me. In my jacket pocket there's a key card. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. If something happens," he continued firmly, "use that card to access my private elevator in the parking garage. It will take you directly to my office building downtown. Ask for Jin Park. He's my second in command. Tell him I sent you, and he'll make sure you're protected." "I'm not leaving you," Arya said fiercely. "You might not have a choice." The sound of footsteps echoed above them again, but this time they were accompanied by a different sound. Sirens in the distance. "Police?" Arya asked hopefully. He-Jin shook his head. "My people? But they might be too late." As if summoned by his words, the stairwell door above them burst open again. But this time, the men who entered weren't wearing masks. Arya got a clear look at their faces, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The lead man was tall and lean, with pale skin and cold blue eyes. When he spoke, his accent was distinctly Russian. "He-Jin Choi," he called down the stairwell. "You have something that belongs to us." "I don't know what you're talking about, Volkov," He-Jin replied, his voice carrying clearly in the concrete space. "The shipment that went missing last week. The one worth $50 million. We know you intercepted it." Arya looked at He-Jin sharply. $50 million? What kind of business was he really in? "Even if I had intercepted it," He-Jin called back, "what makes you think I'd give it back?" Volkov's laugh was cold and humorless. "Because we have leverage now, send up the girl and we'll discuss terms. The girl has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this. We've been watching you, Choi. We know she's become important to you. Important enough that you'll trade $50 million for her life." Arya felt the blood drain from her face. They'd been watching He-Jin long enough to know about his Tuesday dinner orders, long enough to know that she mattered to him. Which meant... "This was never about the money," she whispered, realization hitting her like a physical blow. "They wanted to find your weakness. And I'm it." He-Jin's expression was tortured. "Arya, I never meant for—" "You have 1 minute to decide," Volkov called down. The girl for the shipment location. Otherwise, we start shooting our way down to you." "What was in the shipment?" Arya asked quietly. Heijin was silent for a long moment. "Information, names, locations, financial records, evidence of their human trafficking operations." "You stole evidence of human trafficking?" "I intercepted it to turn over to the FBI. There are dozens of women and children being held in facilities across the southeast. That information is the only way to find them." Arya stared at him, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. "You're not just a criminal, are you? You're trying to stop them." "It's complicated." "No, it's not." Arya's voice was firm. "You're one of the good guys. Maybe you operate outside the law, maybe your methods aren't conventional, but you're trying to save people." 30 seconds, Volkov called. Arya looked up the stairwell, then back at Heijin. "Where is the information hidden?" "Arya, no, I won't trade innocent lives for yours, no matter how much you mean to me." "I'm not asking you to trade anything." She pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message. "I'm asking you to trust me." "What are you doing?" "Something my father taught me. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to change the rules of the game entirely." She hit send on her message, then called up the stairwell. "Mr. Volkov, I'm coming up, but I want to make a deal." "Arya, no!" Heijin grabbed her arm, but she gently pulled away. "Trust me," she said again. "Please." Against every instinct screaming at him to stop her, Heijin watched as Arya began walking up the stairs, her hands visible and empty. "I'm not armed," she called to Volkov, "and I'm not trying to escape. I just want to talk." She reached the landing where Volkov and his men were waiting. Up close, the Russian was even more intimidating, but Arya forced herself to meet his cold gaze. "You want to trade me for information about your trafficking operations," she said calmly. "That's right. But here's the thing. I just sent a text message to my contact at the Miami Herald. In exactly 10 minutes, if I don't send a follow-up message, they're going to publish a story about the Korean businessman who's been helping the FBI track down human trafficking rings, complete with photos of this building and descriptions of tonight's events." Volkov's expression darkened. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Check the news feeds in 10 minutes and find out." Arya's voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "Or you could cut your losses and disappear before every law enforcement agency in South Florida converges on this location." "You think you're clever. Little girl." "I think I'm someone who pays attention, and I've been paying attention to you, Mr. Volkov. I know you're not just some random criminal. You're FSB, aren't you? Former Russian intelligence, which means you understand the value of strategic retreat when an operation is compromised." For a moment the stairwell was silent, except for the sound of sirens growing closer outside. Then Volkov smiled, a cold, predatory expression that made Arya's skin crawl. "Very clever indeed, but you've made one critical error." "What's that?" "You assumed I need you alive to hurt him." The gunshot echoed through the stairwell like thunder, and Arya felt a burning pain tear through her side as she collapsed to the concrete floor. From below, Heijin's roar of rage and anguish filled the air, followed by the sound of running footsteps as he charged up the stairs toward them. But as darkness crept in around the edges of Arya's vision, she could hear something else, the sound of multiple vehicles screeching to a halt outside the building, and voices shouting commands in English and Korean. Her gamble had worked. Help was coming. She just hoped it would arrive in time. Arya drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of chaos erupting around her. Gunfire, shouting in multiple languages, the sound of tactical teams storming the building. But through it all, one voice cut through the noise. Heijin calling her name with desperate urgency. When she finally opened her eyes fully, she was lying on a stretcher in the building's lobby. Paramedics worked around her, but her attention was fixed on the man kneeling beside her, his face pale with fear and streaked with blood. "You're alive," he whispered, his hand finding hers. "So are you," she managed, her voice hoarse. "Volkov, dead, along with most of his men." Heijin's expression was grim. "My security team arrived just after you were shot. The FBI was right behind them. The information, the trafficking victims, safe, all of it, because of what you did up there." He squeezed her hand gently. "You saved them, Arya. Dozens of innocent people are going to go home to their families because you were brave enough to change the rules." A woman in a FBI jacket approached them, her expression professional but not unkind. "Ms. Washington, I'm Agent Sarah Chen. We need to ask you some questions when you're feeling up to it. She needs medical attention first, He-jin said firmly. Of course, but I wanted her to know. What she did tonight, sending that message to the press, it forced Volkov's hand and allowed us to move in. She's a hero. Arya tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in her side. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who delivers food and knows how to fix things. You fixed more than you know, Agent Chen said. Mr. Choi has been working with us for 6 months, helping us track down trafficking networks. Tonight's operation was supposed to be a controlled handoff of information, but Volkov's people found out about it. Arya looked at He-jin with new understanding. You're an informant. More than that, Agent Chen continued. He's been using his business connections to gather intelligence on criminal organizations throughout the Southeast. It's dangerous work, and tonight proves just how dangerous. Which is why this has to end, He-jin said quietly, his eyes never leaving Arya's face. I can't keep putting people I care about at risk. Actually, Agent Chen interjected, we were hoping you'd consider continuing the partnership. With Volkov's network dismantled, there are other organizations we need to investigate. Your unique position in Miami's underground economy makes you invaluable. No, He-jin said firmly, I'm done. But the work you're doing, Agent Chen began. I will continue, He-jin interrupted. But not by me. I'm transferring my legitimate business operations to my second-in-command and retiring from anything that could put innocent people in danger. Arya studied his face, seeing the finality in his expression. You're really walking away from everything? Not everything. His thumb traced across her knuckles. I'm walking towards something more important. The paramedic cleared his throat. We need to get her to the hospital now. As they lifted her stretcher, He-jin walked alongside, never letting go of her hand. Arya, I need you to know something. What? When you were lying there bleeding, when I thought I might lose you before I ever had the chance to tell you how I feel, his voice broke slightly. I realized that everything I've been fighting for, everything I've built, none of it matters if I don't have someone to share it with. He-jin, I know it's too soon. I know tonight was traumatic, and you might not want anything to do with this world or with me, but engineers failed, Arya interrupted softly. But the poor delivery girl solved everything. He looked confused. What? That's what tonight was about, wasn't it? All those experts, all that technology, all those resources, and in the end, it was just a girl with a toolkit and the willingness to see solutions where others saw problems. You're much more than just a girl with a toolkit. I know. Just like you're much more than just a dangerous businessman. Arya squeezed his hand as they reached the ambulance. You're someone who risks everything to save people. Someone who sees a delivery driver as more than just invisible help. Someone who makes me feel like I matter. You do matter, more than you could possibly know. As the paramedics loaded her into the ambulance, Arya made a decision that surprised even her. When I get out of the hospital, we're going to have a proper conversation about what you do, about what I do, about what we might do together. Together? You said it yourself, you need someone to share your life with, and I've spent 3 years taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time I let someone take care of me, too. He-jin's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. I love you, Arya Washington. I love you too, He-jin Choi. Now get in this ambulance before I change my mind about dating a reformed criminal. As the ambulance pulled away from the Meridian Tower, Arya reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in a single night. She'd started the evening as a delivery driver, just trying to make ends meet. She was ending it as a woman in love with a man who'd shown her that sometimes the most broken things could be fixed with the right tools and the courage to try. And sometimes the person doing the fixing ended up being fixed in return. Years later, Arya stood in the kitchen of their waterfront home in Coral Gables, preparing lunch for the staff of the Choi Foundation, the non-profit organization she and He-jin had built together to combat human trafficking and support survivors. The foundation operated from a gleaming office building downtown, but their real work happened in safe houses, counseling centers, and legal aid clinics throughout South Florida. He-jin's business connections had proven invaluable in the legitimate world, and Arya's problem-solving skills had made her a natural at developing innovative support programs. The Seoul Kitchen delivery is here, He-jin called from the front door, and Arya smiled at the familiar joke. They still ordered from the restaurant every Tuesday, but now it was delivered to their home office where they worked side by side. Tell them to put it in the conference room, she called back. The survivor advocacy meeting starts in 20 minutes. She heard footsteps approaching and turned to find Hye-jin watching her with the same intense gaze that had captivated her that first night in the elevator. Some things never changed. "What?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Just thinking about how different our lives are now." "Different how?" 3 years ago, I was a man with everything and nothing. Power, money, respect, but no real purpose beyond survival. No one who knew the real me. Arya moved closer to him, straightening his tie, a gesture that had become second nature. "And now? Now I wake up every morning next to the woman who saved my life in more ways than one. I spend my days working to save others instead of just protecting myself. And tonight, I get to go to sleep, knowing that tomorrow will be even better, because you'll be there." "Very smooth, Mr. Choi, but you're forgetting something." "What's that, Mrs. Choi?" Arya's smile was radiant as she held up her left hand, where a simple platinum band caught the afternoon sunlight. "You also get to wake up every morning married to the woman who loves you more than she ever thought possible." "Best delivery I ever received," Hye-jin murmured, pulling her into his arms. "And the only one you'll ever need," Arya replied just before he kissed her. Outside